Hey, Alex. Thanks again for doing this. Appreciate you making the time.
Of
Uh,
course.
as I said, super casual, nothing too formal. Just literally think of it like when we were working together. So we'll go through a few questions talking about your experience working with Diggs. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Of course. So let's start here. Take me back to when we first, I guess, like reconnected because we've known each other. Like, what was going on in Resort Pass at the time? What were some of the sales and marketing challenges that you guys were facing?
So Resort Pass being a marketplace, we had a like monster B2C marketing engine, and a lot of resources focused on that, but our nobody really owned like B2B marketing. So my team focusing on new hotel partnerships and launching new hotels and that whole motion. There was just like we were sort of just doing a lot ad hoc. There were a few people that owned it throughout the last couple of years, and with too many people owning it, nobody really owns it, right? So it was like we had one person kind of just sending out emails, and it was like every now and then a newsletter would go out. We didn't, market our product very well, so we just needed a better foundation to start building. We knew we were going to make some hires there, but what we also knew, we were like 10 steps away from that hire being productive once they got in. So like where Diggs and you came in was where it was really helpful. It was like helping us outline, okay, like what's the current state of everything? Because we knew it was just like very kind of just disjointed from a system standpoint, and we couldn't track everything the way that we needed to, or in a way that was actionable. And then, how do we make sure that, okay, we have hires coming in that are probably going to be at least like 4 6 months out? How do we make sure that they can be productive from day one? Just because like we knew they wouldn't in their first couple months be swept up with the products that were on hand. So that was really kind of where this whole thing started.
That like totally makes sense and is a story that I hear time and time again. So like you have this, I'm imagining I'm in your you have this realization or you're thinking about like we need some help on the B2B marketing side. We started talking like what made you feel that myself and Diggs were the right person for the job, and like if you were talking to other people, was there something that stood out before we even started working together?
Well, I think the fact that I already knew you was a big selling point. Like, I mean, look, everybody and their mother on LinkedIn has a HubSpot or a Salesforce shop, right? Everybody can help you automate this or whatever. I haven't looked at LinkedIn in 2 weeks, and I've got like 7 DMs from people that like want to do something. So I think like your business is very much referral based. It's like you sort of have to have that, of all of the options that you have for somebody to come in and just do something, like you sort of have to have that validation, knowing, okay, like this person that I tried, like, had a good experience, like those types, like that. That's the way that it's going to work. Because you could send out 1,000, in mails, and it's not going to get you anywhere. But like, you have two really good engagements with people, like that's going to turn it into it. So it's like I think that like there was just a leg up because like you and I already knew each other, so there wasn't like I didn't have to feel out. I'd agencies in the past, and like some of it was good, some of it wasn't great, but it was like there's always that like, oh, like is this working period, whatever. So it was like we be on like very like talk right from the jump, which was good, and like we just knew we could get to like that was the biggest point. We weren't really talking to too many other people because it was like we were able to get the green light because like these were obvious problems that we knew we needed to solve. It was like, hey, I got it. That can knock this out. So it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Like many of my customers come from past customers, friends of a customer, somebody I worked with in the past. So like the trust is definitely a huge deal on both sides, honestly.
Sure.
And you actually kind of went into my next question, which was, have you worked with other agencies before, and like how was the experience? And it sounds like, and tell me if this is, it's more like the upfront like risk was mitigated. Like that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's an easy way burn some budget and not get a whole lot in a way that's like also potentially like easy to get approved and like get through. So with the ones that are, one in particular that I've worked with in the past to do some that worked out really well. It was because there was the same level of just like attention to detail, communication. Like there was never a point where we're just like, hey, like what's going on? Like I don't know if this is going well. Like everybody on the same page. Like we knew what was going on. It was very clear what we were trying to get done. And the structure of the engagement itself was just like easy and straightforward. That's where you get.
Thank you. And then
You're welcome.
I appreciate it, to get into nuts and bolts of the engagement, everything obviously, like if somebody asked you like what did you actually do at Dig or with Digs that made a difference, like how would you summarize?
So we built the foundation to really scale our inbound and like B2B marketing efforts. Like everything ran through HubSpot. Nobody owned HubSpot. Most people didn't even have access to it, but that's where everything was coming through. So it was, and we had a lot of and we just, at HubSpot for our inbound and our marketing and our landing pages and all that. But then we had that like half integrated with Salesforce, which was our sales CRM. So that was where all the execution was happening. And then we had our outreach tool on the back end of that. So it was like there were just so many different filters for all this information to go through, and like nobody ever like when nobody really peeled back the layers to try and understand it. And so like some stuff was integrated, some wasn't, but like we were just like learning as we go. And so we were in a pretty good situation to be like, hey, let's like rebuild from the ground up, knowing again that we wanted to some of these things to, some of these hires were made, they'd be able to just get to work instead of like try and figure out what was going on. So yeah, we were just like really inefficient. We just didn't have visibility like for all of the volume that we were getting, and like, the ups and downs of our business throughout the year, because we were pretty seasonal. It was like, you know, sometimes we're getting a ton of inbound, sometimes we're not getting a lot, but like we weren't really able to dig into like, okay, like what's working, how are we doing this, like tracking things from, time somebody fills out a form to like them actually signing up, and how long, what are our conversion rates throughout the funnel, all of that from both an inbound and outbound standpoint. So it was really just like, how do we define what we're looking for? How do we understand the capabilities of the system that we have? Knowing that, like, again, on our side, if like 3 or 4 people are thinking about it and doing it, it's not remotely enough brain power to actually get something done. So it was like, hey, somebody like you coming in and actually owning the conversations, like forcing us to make decisions, and then like actually being productive, because like that's how these things become the problems that they are, is because like people really aren't kind of like paying attention to them, and like the business just continues to go along, and then it's finally like, oh, we got to pay attention to this. But like, you hire outside because you don't have the resources to do it. So that's really like where we landed. We knew we wanted to consolidate. We knew we wanted to build the foundation to be able to scale. We wanted to just like at the first things first, like understand what's going on right now, and then build it out from there.
Cool. And in terms of biggest wins or results when we were working together that you saw, like any that stick out, that could be as simple as like HubSpot is now the central operating system that everyone uses, or something like I know we built the notifications when a qualified lead comes in. Like, is there any? I just named two, obviously, but are there things that stick out when somebody's like, hey, what was like a win or a few wins that are tangential or tangible, excuse me, that like out of the engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like, even some of the dashboards that we had created with you guys. It was the first time we had really gathered that data in the way that we knew we wanted. And yeah, I mean, the basis is probably just like, okay, cool. Like this inbound came in, like what happened? And it's like without
Yeah,
having to look, like it's like that's like on the surface, like that's such an easy thing to like figure out. But at the same time, it's like kind of also it's hard. It's easy if you like, hey, I bought HubSpot and I'm onboarding and I'm like building it for the first time. But like if HubSpot's been just running for years, and like an engineer 2 years ago built this thing, and like it was for one function, it's like there's just a lot of like decisions and things implemented in a silo. And so just being able to like refresh a dashboard, know exactly like what happened to something, like, hey, how are we pacing for the month of just like what we would typically expect? What's the quality of what's coming through to? How do we understand? And then like, yeah, now, and it was a big part of us moving everything over to HubSpot. And it was just, that's where the reps are living. And that's like, okay, cool. They get an inbound, they got it. It's assigned to them. It's put into a cadence, like they're good. And now they're just enabled to sell, versus like, oh, I got an email. Now I'm manually forwarding that to the rep, who's now looking at that, manually creating the contact in Salesforce and the account, even though it already exists in Salesforce as a lead. So we're just creating dupes with everything that it was just needed them some firepower behind it to like just rip the wires out and rebuild.
I laugh because what you said up front about like literally answering the question of like what happens to every lead that comes in.
Yeah.
When I ask that question in most of my sales processes up front, the percentage of time somebody has an answer that's like, oh no, we don't know, is like less than 20.
Yeah.
So like everyone thinks that that problem is unique or like they're so far behind. I actually think it's pretty common. Like I actually think
100%.
most companies, Series A, Series B, don't have that answer.
Yeah,
And like,
yeah, for
when
sure.
you put it like that, you put it nicely. It's just like it seems so simple. It's just like, and it can be, but it's usually not. And it's usually very. I always describe it as a knot, some knot that's been tangled 4 years ago by 6 different people.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. And that was because we realized just digging into inbounds ourselves, that was like, oh wait, like why are these opportunities created in HubSpot when nobody's using HubSpot? Oh wait, there's an integration. Oh wait, they're all this is accurate. Like why are the pipelines accurate? Oh, but we have 45 HubSpot pipelines just because Salesforce is telling HubSpot to go. So just a lot of those things that like it took time to like understand, realize we needed a lot of help, and then then the time to just like figure out how we wanted to untie those knots. Might
Yeah,
say.
you can steal that one. It's
I bet
actually
that was good.
very realistic analogy there.
Yeah.
Switching gears just a little bit in terms of working with me and the Digs team day to day. What was your experience just working with us, like as part of your daily, if not workflow?
Yeah, no, right. I think like that, and kind of to my point, you hire outside because you don't have the bandwidth or resources to be able to really like solve the problems. You might understand them and even potentially know how to solve them. You just don't have the time or bandwidth. It was like nobody's there to really actually. And then I think what like it's good because like having valuable conversations, and it's like me and probably I would say like the three or four other people that sort of like were running point on um we can all get into a room and talk and do this, whatever, but it's like having you guys there that was like, okay, like here are two or three options. Here's what's going to happen if we do this. Here's what we can do if we do this. Here's the trade-offs, whatever. It like knows exactly what we need or has seen different versions of it before to be able to help like kind of guide that conversations and also like force us to make decisions because it's like you can get analysis paralysis, especially if three people, four people in a room aren't actually going to be pulling the trigger on anything. Okay, cool. Like, here's the issue at hand. Let's get it done. Now we have the resources to flesh out the actual solution, but then implement it, see if it works, right? So it was just kind of that weekly cadence of be like, okay, cool. Like, and if that like we fell short on in terms of like the partnership, it was on our side of just like, yeah, we just like didn't make decisions quick enough, or like we didn't like spend it, so it's like that's like is making sure that you're everybody's on the same page, but you're also dedicating the time to be able to just like make sure, okay, cool, we're pushing forward, we're giving you guys everything that you need to get to work. Because I know you guys chased us for some like just like, right, hey, who's in charge of this, and we had no idea. I was like, I guess we gotta appoint somebody, but conversations and situations to have, because like otherwise you're not going to do anything to solve anything. So
I actually hear that all the time from current and past clients of like, hey, they always say it's like the annoying, like, hey, you annoying us about this thing is actually like, don't think of it as annoying. It's like you actually
yeah,
need to make that decision, and
yeah,
like no one knows the options besides you. So
yeah, 100%.
I
And
hear
like you're
that.
doing your job too, right? It's like, if you just work with somebody and they're being an annoying, like that's one thing. You're working with us to annoy us to solve these problems. If
Yep.
you're probably not going to solve much.
Yeah. And also like to your point, I find this the clients or the companies, they don't know the options or like what the decision trees are even.
Yeah.
So it's on us, and we try to be proactive of like laying out like here's what we can do, and you need to make this decision, and then this is probably what will happen after.
Yeah, 100%. And that where you guys took a better approach than some of the other agencies that I've worked with, or that who have had a range of experiences doing types of things. You guys brought like long-term solutions to the table. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to solve this thing and it's going to like we check the box for the action item for this past week, and like as an agency we feel like we accomplished this. Like you're for the customer or the company who's day to day, it's like that those band-aids and those like kind of short-term solutions like that compound run into
The
even
same.
bigger problems. Yeah, it's like now, like, okay, cool. What then? It's 8 months later. Like, what did you actually accomplish? If you have the same things on your hand, or just like different, a little bit of a different flavor. So I think what was helpful and where a lot of our issues stemmed from was the fact that it was like, okay, cool. It was just band-aid after band-aid for a while to solve like, hey, the issue at hand. Somebody asked a question, somebody needed a field, or somebody needed something synced, and it was like for like one little thing. It was like, okay, like how is it actually going to affect the system down the road, or what are the decisions like, what are the things you're going to run into as a result of the, like those types of things like that. That's what you don't always get from agencies, because they're just like, hey, the boxes, which really where you guys made a big dent for us.
Yeah, and I appreciate that as well. And you may have kind of led into this answer, and it may be your previous or anything about working with Diggs, the engagement that like surprised you or the team, hopefully in a good way, but like that wasn't you wouldn't have thought of before.
No, not I wouldn't not. I think maybe the type of engagement that we had, I think was different than I initially thought, but that was more just like resource about like launching. And I think yeah, what was surprising was like how like random some of the problems on our side were, just like how silly. It was just like, wait, like this literally makes zero sense. Like, how does this work? Um, and it wasn't even anybody's fault. It's just like, just like LOL. Like, what are all the like this kind of works, but kind of doesn't. But like, it was in the first place. So yeah, I mean, it's like you really like in the that's that like you know, with three or four people and like not make decisions. Like, no, you like super deep because like what you do on a Tuesday in a meeting with Diggs and the decision that you make, is like, you know, 2 weeks later, a rep is going to be clicking around in the system and be like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, or what is this? Or it's like, and it's either going to be a good, like, oh, this is great, this is better. Did you, you know? So those are, you know, I think, yeah, it was just like a million of little decisions that I don't know, I thought it was going to be more like big structural stuff that we were doing, but it was like very, very detailed. Like that's really where you got to be.
Yeah, I think I'm glad in a way that there are no surprises because it means like we did a good job. Again, we knew each other, so it was a little easier, but like doing a good job of what the engagement will look like in
Mhm.
today. On the other hand, surprises in the CRM or how a system works is something I hear all the like literally every day. And I think you actually kind of answered your own question well, where it's like, in my opinion, if you don't get in the details and in the weeds and fix it structurally, then you just have the same problem with four different agencies, or even a full-time person is trying to band-aid things. So like I think
100%.
it's like those little those thousand little things you fix actually create the big picture structure that actually works moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah, yeah.
So
Exactly.
that's actually like here on my end. Um let's say you were talking, or I had you talk to a prospective customer or somebody in your network that has a what would you tell them if they were like evaluating or thinking about evaluating?
Um, um, I mean, like you if you do it the right, like it's all you if you have the right partner, which like you guys were the right partner, then like you're gonna make progress. I think that's like the biggest thing. Like you could choose a shitty partner, or I don't know if I'm people, or like that, and it doesn't, and you just sort of go in circles, or somebody who like is actually gonna make a dent. And again, the thing that important for us was just like, hey, like make like just make decisions sooner rather than later, right? Like especially if you can understand, like, you know, yeah, we can walk this back a little bit, or we can test something, like that's great, but it's just like the speed to make decisions. Like you guys as a resource, you're already like helping take things much further than we would as on
Yeah,
board, right? So it's like um the more time you deliberate, the more time you like hold off, and like there's a lot of things popped up and we're like, oh man, like we got to figure out this and this before we can think about this. It's like, do you actually, you know, it's like, or like, can you just deal with the, you're gonna get where you need to go, and it might not be the way that you expected, but like the way to get the most value out of these engagements is like, hey, just like make decisions quickly, like you use the time that you have, and the fact that you guys know, you know, and these problems in and out, and how other people have solved them. I think too with work, like you, to your point earlier, like things are, everybody thinks they have a unique problem or whatever. It's like it's all, everybody has the same problem. It literally looks different. So it's like, but you know, when you're in the thick of it and you also have other stuff on your plate, it's hard to realize. You know, it's like so.
yeah,
So yeah, I would say, long story short, make sure you have the right partner that you can trust to, like, okay, if I do make these decisions, like whatever they're gonna, like, you're gonna have the best interest of, you know, their, just like make sure that you're internally communicating with the right people to just like be able to make those decisions, because you're not dealing, you know, ramping up a new employee, or like to in this role having them deal with all the stuff, or you know, or doing it all yourself. You're saving way more time. So it's like, yeah, just put yourself in a position as the customer to be able to get guys as much information as they can.
yeah, and
um,
it sounds like, not to put words in your mouth at all, but it sounds like from your and your team's perspective, those things from the dig side were being pushed in a good way and were well organized, and like decisions were being made because the communication was there. Like,
mhm.
and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's actually like super beneficial for you guys because
Yeah,
you needed a little support, and that's why you bring someone like us on.
for sure. Yeah, like everything that we dealt with was like just out of reach of everybody's true role. Like everybody was dependent. It was just out of reach for like what you're doing, normally, to where like none of us were actually going to be able to like make a dent and get in there, or like really understand what needed to happen. Like, so we saw the end result of like, hey, I think this probably doesn't work, like, or this definitely isn't working. Uh,
Yeah.
but like to really peel it back and figure out how to work, obviously takes much more. A lot of people are going to be able to give it.
Cool. And then final question. Anything else you'd want someone else, either who is evaluating or maybe who has never even heard of Digs, to know about the experience working with us? That could be way of working, what we accomplished, just like uh, communication styles, like literally anything.
Yeah, no, I think like for me and like what's important with these types of engagements is like I was like there was enough time dedicated every single week to be able to like flesh out, solve the problems. You were able to like manage the mess on our side and just like new people coming in and like like ambiguous roles, like people who are not related to marketing but like are in charge of the like there's nobody else, so like being able to like kind of handle the ambiguity on our side of just like who's doing what, everybody. And yeah, I mean just like the sort of ad hoc like communication throughout the week of just like, hey, here's the progress, here's like a decision that you guys still needed or more information. Progress was just like it was it was exactly what you need to be able to push things forward, but not like dedicate so much time to this because it's like that's you guys get hired because it's like, hey, we don't have the time. We want you guys to handle this, but like you obviously are very dependent on our input if it's going to work. So I think it was the perfect balance of just like how much time we could dedicate versus like you guys' ability to execute. Also, just like the frequency of communication that was keeping everyone, because a lot of times it's like it just doesn't go like that. And, then you implement something that, from an agency and like it's immediately broken. And it's like, okay, like it wasn't tested. It was like, okay, well, like now there's like 14 other questions. Something else broke. Like it's like just because there's like a lack of communication. So you got the biggest thing, I guess, long story short, is you guys communicated well. So it made us like everybody was just always on the same page.
Cool. I appreciate that. Thank you seriously for doing this. Like I'll be
Oh,
editing. I'll
anytime.
send you if there's a full edited version or clips, I still got to figure that out, but I'll send it to you. Also,
Okay.
honestly, and I don't know if I'll leave this in or not, but the thing that actually is the most makes me the most happy is like the framework and the system and the operating out of HubSpot that like still is being used.
Oh
Like
yeah, big
that's
time.
like and the dashboards like and the Slack notifications like that.
Yeah.
I feel like I when I hear from people who like are evaluating digs, it's like that is a lot of them lack from their previous engagements.
Mhm.
Like, oh, the thing ended, and like everything we did ended when the thing ended.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
so like, yeah, that's like that alone makes me like happy because it's like the things we did are actually still there and people are still using them.
For sure. And like we knew how to like the other thing too is like you become dependent on the agency, and it's almost
Yeah,
in the agency's best interest to make that happen, right? And I've had that before where it's like, okay, cool, like now I need to manage this myself or I just need to do something quick, and it's like, now I'm getting charged for 30 minutes to just do some like thing that could have. Those are the things that you run into. But so it's like, hey, it was up and running. We understood how it worked, and we were able to like maintain and do it ourselves. And like to that point, we made those hires. They came in, and they were all like, "Wow, I'm like really happy you guys got this where it is," because like it was because like there's still issues to solve that there always will be. But they were like, "All right, cool. No, that this was a huge win. Like otherwise, they would have had."